You know, it strikes me as a profoundly curious and paradoxical state of affairs, the one we find ourselves in today. Here you are, living in an age of absolute technological miracles. With these little glowing rectangles you hold in your hands, you can access the entire accumulated knowledge of human civilization. You can speak to someone on the other side of the planet in an instant, and you can summon almost any object you desire to appear at your doorstep. By any standard of history, you have become gods. And yet, I see a deep and pervasive anxiety haunting these new gods. I'm not talking about the ordinary circumstantial worry that is simply part of being alive, but a persistent, excessive fear about everyday things, a feeling of impending doom that you find difficult to control and that is wildly out of proportion to the actual situation. The evidence for this little paradox is, frankly, overwhelming. I'm told that anxiety disorders are now the most common of all mental disorders on the planet, affecting some 301 million people, or about 4% of the global population, and the trend seems to be accelerating. Recent polls suggest nearly half the adults in the United States feel more anxious than they did the year before. And you feel it in your bodies, don't you? The racing heart, the quick breathing, the churning stomach, the sense of restlessness, the inability to concentrate on anything other than the source of your worry. You have built a global brain of interconnected information, and in the process, it seems you have lost your own minds. This anxiety is only deepened by a growing, though often unspoken, awareness of rather profound existential risks. The very same technological genius that grants you your conveniences has also cooked up challenges on a global scale in your energy, your environment, and in what you call grain technologies. Genomics, robotics, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology that require a level of unified cooperation you've never before managed. Scholars are calling this one of the most vulnerable periods in human history, a time when the sheer speed of change has dangerously outpaced your social and institutional ability to respond. You are, in essence, like children playing with cosmic fire, and the low-grade hum of dread that permeates your civilization is a tacit acknowledgement of this fact. All your attempts to control and improve the external world, which were born from a fundamental sense of being separate from it, have paradoxically resulted in a profound loss of control over your internal worlds. The anxiety you feel isn't some bug in your technological system. It is a feature of a worldview that your technology has made inescapable. You have, with tremendous success, built a world that is a perfect reflection of your own mistaken identity. Now, at the very root of this whole mess is a foundational illusion, a feeling I've talked about for years, the sensation of oneself as a separate ego, an isolated center of feeling and action, locked up inside a bag of skin. This feeling, you see, is a hallucination. It's a social convention you are conditioned into from the moment you are born. Your very language reinforces it. You say, "I came into this world," as if you were a temporary visitor from somewhere else entirely. But the reality is that you do not come into this world. You come out of it in the same way a leaf comes out of a tree or a wave comes out of the ocean. Every individual is a unique expression of the total universe. a fact that your socially conditioned consciousness is trained to ignore, and this leaves you with a profound sense of loneliness and alienation. You see, your language is a marvelous tool, but it has tricked you. It is based on subjects, verbs, and predicates, which contains a hidden belief that events are started by things, by nouns. But in the real universe, there are no separate things at all. A thing is a think, a unit of thought. We chop the world up into bits for the convenience of talking about it. And then we forget that we did the chopping and believe the world is really made of bits. You believe there is you, and then there is your experience. But can you find the experiencer without the experience? Can you find the thinker without the thought? The lightning flashes. We say the lightning did the flashing, but you can't have the lightning without the flash. The flash is the lightning. In the same way, you are not a little person inside your head who has thoughts and feelings. You are the thinking and the feeling. The idea of a separate I who controls it all is a grammatical fiction. This fiction, this ghost in the language, is what I call the ego. And I've sometimes described it as a kind of radar on a ship. The radar is a troubleshooter. Its job is to scan the environment for obstacles, for things that might go wrong. And your conscious attention, your ego, functions in much the same way. It is constantly scanning for trouble, which implies there is always something to be afraid of. So if you identify yourself with your troubleshooter, you naturally define yourself as being in a perpetual state of anxiety. You have mistaken the instrument for the user, the symbol for yourself. You have become convinced that you are the incessant, anxious chatter in your own skull. And of course, this anxious, chattering ghost of a self finds its perfect partner in the frantic, absurd activity of your modern life, what you call hustle culture. This cultural ethos, which glorifies constant productivity and relentless overwork at the expense of your well-being, is the ultimate expression of the folly of living for the future. I diagnosed this condition decades ago, describing the successful person who spends their entire life in frantic paperwork with the goal of one day retiring in comfort, only to find that when the future finally arrives, they have no capacity to enjoy it. Such a person, living for a future that is a mere abstraction, is, as we say of the insane, not quite all there because they are perpetually chasing a retreating phantom. Hustle culture is this pathology writ large, a societal-level rat race to an imaginary finish line. The studies I've seen on this paint a grim picture. A staggering 82% of your employees report being at risk of burnout, a state of chronic physical and emotional exhaustion. A similar number, 80%, report suffering from productivity anxiety, a persistent fear of not doing enough. This isn't just a demanding work ethic. It is a cultural disease that leads to all sorts of negative outcomes. Overworking has been linked to hundreds of thousands of deaths per year from stroke and heart disease. It strains your relationships, with 83% of people saying burnout negatively impacts their personal lives. It weakens your immune system and leads to chronic fatigue, anxiety, and depression. The internal logic of this race is, when you look at it, transparently absurd. The justification for the hustle is to make money. The justification for making money is to achieve security and live well. But living well is defined as finally having the time to do what one enjoys. The great joke, then, is that you are compelled to spend your life doing things you do not enjoy in order to earn the right to continue living, which means continuing to do things you do not enjoy. It is a vicious circle of self-perpetuating dissatisfaction. It is, in a word, stupid. This race is enforced by an always-on culture, fueled by the digital leash of your smartphone. Work communications now follow you everywhere, blurring the lines between your professional and personal lives, not into some harmonious integration, but into a state of perpetual low-grade work. The promise of a future reward is used to justify the constant sacrifice of the present reality. In this way, hustle culture functions as a form of secularized puritanism, where success has replaced salvation as the prize for a life of toil, and your technology has become the new omnipresent church, enforcing its doctrine through an endless stream of notifications. And as if that weren't enough, you've compounded the anxiety of the chattering ego and the exhaustion of the great race with the very nature of your modern information environment. In its attempt to capture and present everything, it has precipitated a crisis of attention that prevents you from experiencing reality directly. You are drowning in a sea of information but starved of genuine meaning. I wrote about this back in 1951, and it seems even more true today. A constant titillation of the ears, eyes, and nerve ends with incessant streams of almost inescapable noise and visual distractions. This perfectly describes your 21st century digital experience, an environment that leaves many with a reduced attention span, demanding media to match. The problem is not that technology is inherently bad, but that there is a fundamental mismatch between the nature of the universe and the nature of your linear, one-track minds. The universe, you see, is a grand, simultaneous, multi-tracked affair where everything is happening everywhere, all at once. Your conscious attention, however, can only process this reality step by step, line by line. Your digital feeds are a perfect technological representation of this limitation, creating what I once called an orgasm without release, a state of constant stimulation without any deep satisfaction, which is the very engine of your digital dependency and addiction. This constant bombardment overloads your brain's cognitive mechanisms, leading to impaired memory, decision fatigue, and chronic stress. You spend your days consuming menus of life, photographs of meals, videos of travels, articles about experiences. You become so engrossed in the description of reality that you forget to experience it directly. And the meal, the actual tangible non-conceptual reality, is always and only available right here, right now. This symphony of distraction has led to a peculiar and tragic side effect, the extinction of silence. It seems you have become terrified of stillness. The moment there is a gap in the noise, you rush to fill it with a podcast, with music, with the endless scroll, but in doing so, you are losing your connection to the world. Silence is not an emptiness to be feared. It is the background against which all sounds can be heard. It is the space in which creativity and clarity can arise. The sociologist Hartmut Rosa used a wonderful metaphor. Modern life is like being on an escalator that is moving downwards, and it takes all of our effort just to stand still. You are so busy trying to conquer the world, to tame it, that you have become alienated from it. You have forgotten how to simply be still and let the world reveal itself to you. Now, after painting such a grim picture of your modern condition, of anxious gods haunted by grammatical ghosts, running a frantic race to nowhere while deafened by a symphony of distraction. You might think this is a hopeless predicament, but that's only if you believe the solution requires more effort, more struggle, or more self-improvement. And that, you see, is just playing the same old game. The antidote lies not in trying harder, but in a radical shift of approach inspired by the old Taoist principle of Wu Wei. Wu Wei is often translated as not doing, but I find a more accurate rendering is not forcing or effortless action. It is the art of acting in harmony with the underlying pattern of things, of moving with the grain of the wood rather than against it. It is the wisdom of the boatman who uses the current to his advantage instead of trying to row against it. Your modern anxiety is a state of constant forcing an identity, forcing productivity, forcing a desired future. Wu Wei is the practice of intentional non-forcing. This is related to another Taoist idea, that of the Pu, the uncarved block. This refers to a state of natural simplicity before the mind has carved the world up with names and judgments. The goal is not to become a blockhead, but to work upon nature with skill, moving in the direction it is already going, so that the result seems more natural than nature itself. The most potent analogy for this practice is water. To have faith, I've always said, is to trust yourself to the water. When you swim, you don't grab hold of the water, because if you do, you will sink and drown. Instead, you relax and float, all your frantic grasping at security, at control, at a stable sense of self. That is what causes you to sink into the depths of anxiety. The invitation is to let go, to relax the psychic grip and allow yourself to be supported by the very reality you are fighting. A second water analogy speaks to your overactive, confused minds. Muddy water, the Taoists say, is best cleared by leaving it alone. Your incessant attempts to solve your anxiety by thinking about it, analyzing it, and scrolling for answers is the very stirring that keeps the water muddy. The practice of Wu Wei in this context is to allow the sediment of thought to settle on its own. By gently returning our attention from the world of concepts to the simple, non-verbal reality of the present moment, the feeling of the breath, the sound of the room, the sensation of your body. And so you see we arrive back where we started, at the great secret that was never a secret at all. The supreme cosmic joke is that your frantic search for meaning, happiness, and spiritual fulfillment is the very activity that obscures it. All the seeking is but a dance taking place within the very thing that is sought. The present moment cannot be lost, for it is all there is. The illusion of the separate ego leads to the project of self-improvement, but this project is a magnificent paradox. How can the self that needs improving be the one to do the improving? It is, as I'm fond of saying, like trying to bite your own teeth or lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. The very act of trying to transcend or eliminate the ego reinforces the illusion that there is a real, substantial ego to be overcome in the first place. The invitation, therefore, is radically simple. Stop. Stop chasing the future. Stop improving the self. Stop pretending you are anywhere but here, now. Let go of the struggle, not to attain some grand state of enlightenment, but to fall back into the ordinary, miraculous, utterly irreplaceable reality of this present moment. The universe is not a problem to be solved. It is a mystery to be savored. Life is not a race toward a finish line. It is more like a piece of music, and the point is not to get to the end, but to dance to it while it is being played. The universe did not place you here to struggle toward an imaginary goal. It placed you here to play. You were never just the wave, anxiously comparing its performance to others. You are, and always have been, the entire ocean. The curtain falls on the illusion of the separate self. And what remains? Just this, effortless, boundless, and already free.